I don't really want to stunt the conversation because it's going pretty good. Wilbur Zehr, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Very proud of you guys. Yeah, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Okay, we got 2 listeners now because Calder admitted that he was also a listener.
That's right.
Yeah. No, we have been thinking about having you on for a long time, but you are overseas a lot, so kind of makes it tough. Tough to get in.
I'd say I came back just for this, but that's
well. You can just say that. You can just say that, and then we'll just leave that. We'll edit that part out, I guess. You're pretty unique in a lot of ways. You work overseas a lot. You traveled a lot, especially for a native boy from around Lewis County. You might have taken the cake. You might be the most traveled person in the county.
I might be. I don't know.
Can you even say you're from the county anymore? I don't know.
Listen, born and raised in Krogan, New York. Beaver River Beaver here, so
that's right.
Yeah,
some people might not know what that means, but local people know.
I won't hold it against you. It's okay.
It's 2-on-1 here.
Yeah, that's true. I am outnumbered.
Yeah, Brock, as we call it, the land of state champions. But yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
Yeah, good. If you would, could you just let our audience know a little bit more about you and kind of what you're about and what you do?
Sure. So, as they mentioned, Wilbur Zehr. I love being home here because I don't have to spell my last name in this area. Everybody knows it. But local kid, grew up here in Lewis County. Both of my parents are from the area, and lots of cousins and relatives, friends and family here. After high school in the mid-'80s, I actually moved down to New York City and was down there, went to college, was part of a church congregation. Kind of neat story that took me down there, and met my wife in New York. And even though my heart has always kind of been here in Lewis County, and that's not the plan God had for us. And so we left New York and lived in Hong Kong for about 5 years. And our youngest daughter was born there. Our first 2 were born in the Bronx, and then moved back to the Bronx for a few years, and then got a job with the U.S. State Department. So. Since 2004, just a little over 20 years now, I've been working for the U.S. State Department, which is the arm of the federal government that staffs our embassies and consulates overseas. And so for the last 20 years, we've been moving every few years, country to country, and serving the American people.
Yeah. So homegrown, wanted to be here. This is like I can relate to that some myself.
Yeah.
But can you tell us some of the places that you've lived?
Yeah. So I guess starting from leaving here, moving to the Bronx, and then spent time in Hong Kong, working in ministry in Hong Kong and China. Joined the Foreign Service, and our first post was Beijing in China. Second post was in San Salvador. I think Brock, you and your family visited us in El Salvador. Third post was sort of back to home. We were in Ottawa, Canada, which is not too far to us to the north.
That's right.
Spent some time there. After Ottawa, we were in Turkey, in Istanbul, Turkey, at the consulate there. After Turkey, let me get these right, we were in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Of course, that was during the cartel wars in 2013 to 2015. And so we lived there for a couple years on the border of Mexico and Texas. Have a lot of thoughts on the border issue from living there and working that issue. After that, where were we? We went to Israel. We were in Tel Aviv, Israel for a tour. That was life-changing for us. After Tel Aviv, in Belize, so back to Central America. Belize is a small country by Mexico and Guatemala, English-speaking.
That's the one country that Elliot couldn't get into when he was doing his motorcycle. Yeah, they turned him around.
That's right. Yeah,
he didn't have the right thing.
You were there laying down the law.
No, actually, it was before we were there, but
sure.
I would have gotten him in. And then from Belize, we went back to Israel, and we're in Jerusalem now. So we've been there for 2 years and have at least 2 more years to go. So.
Okay.
Wow,
yeah.
cool.
That's a lot of
so
travel.
they put you in Ottawa when the Canadians got a little wild, tried storming the gates.
That's it.
They needed extra staff.
The hard thing was the language, learning to speak English properly.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Ottawa was such a normal post that we were part of a Christian church there. And when we were leaving, I let people know, like, oh, I have to leave. We're going to Washington, D.C. and this. And And this guy I'd known for a year was like, "You're an American?" All right. I must have had the accent down or something.
Well, we always joke that where we are, we're basically Southern Canadians anyway.
That's right.
You know, like we're far up in New York.
Exactly.
We're right on the cusp.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Do you have to speak a lot of languages when you go different places?
Yeah. So depends on the job that I'm doing. And I have studied, I wouldn't say spoke, but I've studied Chinese and Turkish, Hebrew, and Spanish. And of those, I speak Spanish and can fight my way through Hebrew a little bit and have forgotten everything else. And so, yeah, I think there's room in our brains for about a language and a half, at least mine anyway. And and English takes up about 1+. So that's all I get.
They say that about kids can learn up to something like 7, but then as you get older, it becomes so much harder. Probably so malleable.
I really envy those of my colleagues who just learn languages very fast and pick them up. And,
Kurt spit out some Chinese last week. That was like, whoa. Like,
so, he spent a lot of time in China.
Yeah.
He came his first trip to China. He stayed with us. He came over and stayed with us in Beijing. Yeah, I remember that.
Back-to-back episodes, connections.
That's
just
cool.
like we planned it.
There you go.
So he did actually come all the way here just for this.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
We got Nick.
Do you think, is your job interesting to you?
It's very interesting to me. It's very, very interesting to me. I have, I love listening to you guys talk about entrepreneurship and business and things like that because I just don't have that mind. I did own a business for a while. I owned a coffee shop in New York City. And,
really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I didn't know it was a coffee shop.
Yeah,
cool.
It was. People call it a Greek diner in New York. It's a breakfast and lunch place. You know, greasy spoon.
Did you have a sign over that said "World's Best Coffee"? And then
we had the sign, the exact sign. You know, everybody talks about the elf sign, right? We actually had one of those, and we had the little blue cups.
Congratulations!
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Nobody ever walked in and told me congratulations, but yeah. So yeah, business just isn't my thing. But I tell people I have professional ADD.
Okay.
Like I'll do a job for a few years, and I just get bored with it. I'm like, oh, let me try something else. I actually went to school for history and thought I'd be a history teacher. I've heard you say that, Brock. And just never worked out and never finished that. But I would just kind of lose interest in things or just want to try something new. And so I just hopped from things every few years, which puts a lot of pressure on the family, on my wife and kids who are looking for stability. Yeah. But in 2002, I was back in New York. I was working at the New York Psychiatric Institute, actually. And I tell people I went for a job, not as a patient, so don't judge me. But was working there.
We'll have to fact check that, I guess.
The internet was a new thing in 2002, and there was this thing, Yahoo, and you had that Yahoo question of the day. And for the Yahoo question of the day, that day, it happened to be, what is diplomatic immunity? And it went on to describe diplomatic immunity. I was like, this is really cool, you know?
Yep.
Diplomats get to shoot people and get away with it. I love this. This is really neat. You know?
Right.
And at the bottom was a link. It said, if you want to become a diplomat, click here. And I clicked on it. And it had a list of qualifications, what you needed to join the U.S. Foreign Service. And I was like, me again. And I was like, hey, I qualify for this. Wow. So I called Shiki up. Actually, I was in my mid-30s. I was probably, what year would that have been? 2002. So I don't know, 35 or so.
Wow.
And I called Shiki up and said, found out what I want to do when I grow up. And that led me, to start taking some of the exams and the process of getting and joining the Foreign Service. Yeah. Wow. Took about 2 years, and 2004 we got hired, sent to Washington, D.C. I should have mentioned in between all those tours, we're usually in D.C. for anywhere from 2 or 3 months to up to a year in between tours for training and things. Yeah, usually language training and things like that. But
like a home base.
Yeah.
Do you have the option to stay in one place or the other, or do they just move you around? Or you bid for them? Or
Yeah. We bid for them. They do move us around. The tours are set. Usually there's 1-year tours. If they're sending you to an Afghanistan or Iraq, something like that, it's going to be a 1-year tour. If they're sending you to someplace a little bit harder, like we were in Juarez for 2 years, right? That was a 2-year tour. And then at the beginning of your career, it's just 2-year tours as they're checking you out to see if you're a good fit for this job or not. But most tours are 3 years, are for 3 years. If you're in a 3-year tour in a place that's a little bit more difficult, you can request to extend to a 4th year. But many you can't. It's just 3 years and out. And there's a few reasons, I think, why they do that. I don't think I've ever seen it written anywhere, but in my mind, there's a few reasons why. One would be if they didn't move people around, nobody would leave Paris. And nobody would go to, Abuja, right? And we need people in both places, right?
Right.
And so that's part of it. Another part of it probably has to do with kind of the whole espionage thing, They don't want to leave you there too long to maybe get yourself in trouble. That's probably a part of it. And then I think a third part of it actually has to do with our role as diplomats. We are there representing the United States to another culture, to another nation. And that's our job. Our job is not to come and assimilate and be like, and you leave somebody too long in a country and they're like, you know what, I hate America too. You're right. Yes. I agree with you. So right. I think it's a combination of all of that. Yeah. And then similar to the military, you're supposed to be moving from job to job and moving up. It's an up and out system. So you got to be kind of moving your way up. So,
so it kind of worked to your personality just right then.
It did. It did. Here, keep the same job, move to a new country every 2 years. That's
you.
I was like, this is perfect.
That sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah. My dad talks, it's funny he's talked about business. My dad sometimes says he has like a 5-year period where after that 5 years he needs to do something else, like or expand something else, or he's looking for different ventures after 5 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's unique with me that need to accomplish more or do more, right? Yeah. It's kind of inbred in many of us men, I think, right?
Get a little restless.
Satisfied. Yeah.
What? So I think people are thinking like, man, is this guy like James Bond, or like what does he do? So why don't you tell us like what you do, or like if you want to make it interesting, you could say like what's a day on the job look like for you, or what exactly do you do?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, anybody who knows me probably gets that James Bond picture out pretty quick, My wife and I will be, watching a movie or something, and me sitting overweight on the couch with a bag of chips, like, yeah, honey, that's not me, sorry, this is all you get, right? So I originally joined the Foreign Service as an office management specialist, which sounds really high and mighty, but runs a lot of the administrative assistant, secretarial functions in different offices. The difference would be you have to obtain a top secret clearance first, because you're going to be seeing classified information in that. So it was very interesting. But all along from the very beginning, I knew I wanted to get into what I'm doing now. I'm a consular officer. And so the Bureau of Consular Affairs is twofold. One side is doing visa operations for foreigners who are hoping to come to the United States, either as non-immigrants, meaning tourists, students, or immigrants, those who are coming to immigrate here, get a green card, and eventually live. So that's one half of consular affairs. And then the other half is American citizen services. So assisting and providing assistance to Americans overseas, outside of the country. And that's actually, on paper, that's the most important job of our government overseas. In any time there's an earthquake or a hurricane or, war or whatever,
hostage
we all become American citizen services specialists, and we, let's help Americans. So I love it. It's been really neat. My jobs have varied through the years as I kind of work my way up. I'm currently in Jerusalem. My title is American Citizen Services Chief in Jerusalem. I have a counterpart at our embassy branch office in Tel Aviv, and he and I together are covering the whole area of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, and all the American citizens there. We don't really know what that number is. It's well over 500,000, probably less than 1 million, but somewhere within that number. And it's bigger than the population of Wyoming and a couple other places for sure.
And typically in these different places that you're posted, what are the, like, maybe it's different. So right now in your current location in Israel, what are those Americans doing there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you helping them with?
So in Israel and the West Bank, many Americans live there.
Okay.
Right. So they're dual citizens who live there. We've got one side of my staff are working every day to provide passports and reports of birth, documentation to American citizens. If you've traveled at all, your kid's passport's only good for 5 years. So every 5 years they're coming back in to renew those, and we're making sure, it's the right kid with the right parent and all that kind of thing. We're one of the biggest passport and reports of birth operations in the world. The other side of it is what we call special consular services, and that's everything from destitute Americans, somebody gets caught up overseas, and whether mental issues, drug abuse, whatever, just circumstances are caught there and need help getting home or need help. You have that. We have Americans who are sick or missing. Family members want to try and find somebody. We have Americans who are imprisoned, and so we follow up with them and deal with those. And then all the way to our death cases. So a lot of Americans die overseas, and we help, facilitate the family and getting death certificates and all of that.
Yeah, there's a lot more infrastructure in place for,
Yeah,
and a lot more Americans abroad than I even realized.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure behind supporting that is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that's a lot of neat stories I can't really share on air here, but it's very sobering work and very needed. It's what really drew me to the job was. I thought, man, that's got to be such a difficult thing to do, to call up a family member and tell them about their family member who's just died overseas. And I thought, I want to be the one that makes that phone call. I would like to be that person, right? Find somebody who's imprisoned overseas and was not expecting to be in that situation. I want to be the person who goes and visits them, and that's, I get to be the one to see them. That's what really drew me to the job.
Why? Yeah. Just because it sounds interesting to you, or because you think you have a heart where you can take care of people that that you have to talk to about that kind of stuff, or like what drew you to it?
Yeah, I think our calling as believers to help the sick and the needy and the poor, to visit the prisoner in prison, right? It's a direct calling, right?
Yeah.
And so I think all of the above on that. Cool.
Yeah, there's something about being the guy who can be the vessel.
That's
important.
I had a situation in one post where it was just a really horrible situation. We had a horrible crash, a number of dead people, and some were in the hospital dying and all of that. And so I went with our ambassador on Thanksgiving Day to go see these people, and he was just blown away to see how I handled it. I think. And, without giving details or anything, I think a lot has to do with my walk. I know you guys as well. My walk as a believer and knowing, in many places you're just bringing Christ into a situation and bringing that peace and comfort and joy, even when you may not feel it on the inside. So,
yeah, I can imagine you're a decent messenger. Yeah. I think it's obvious that the gift is there,
And I'm looking at Brock here as a police officer, it does get, I don't know if it gets, in one sense it gets easier, or at least you know how to do it. It doesn't, in your heart it might not be easier. It's always tearing you apart, but it's, I've had young officers look at me like, how did you do that? Done it before.
Somebody else is guiding me too.
Yeah.
Corwin Chrisman, who we had on like third episode, was also in law enforcement. He had said that a firefighter one time came on a scene and he could feel the Holy Spirit.
Wow. Yeah.
Like he was took control. Everything was calm, and he did so well and prayed with them. And that's what that's the hard part for me. When I was doing it, it was hard to remind myself of that all the time, because especially in policing, it's mundane. It's everybody's worst day. It's just so much pressure and stress on your own life and your own body. And like, it's easy to get caught up in the negativity. And so that was something I battled all the time.
Yeah.
But
we have a tendency sometimes to separate ministry from business, or ministry from our work and that. And, I have a good friend who learned pretty early on that business is ministry, right? And your employees see you, and whether they know or don't know what you believe, they see how you act and what you do. And they see you in good days. They see you when things are really tense and rough. They see you when there's pressure from on high, things are coming down from the White House or somewhere, and how you handle all of that is all our testimony, isn't it? It's all, they're going to see us in our good times and bad times. So.
That's a good point.
Yep.
That's some good perspective.
Yeah.
I wish more people realize that. Yeah. I mean, from like a boss's perspective, like how you act in every little different situation, people see every second of that. And I don't think enough people realize that, that you're under a microscope and you're in a position like you're in.
Yeah. That is our testimony. You're right. Okay. So you moved around from continent to continent.
Yeah.
All over the place. And you had mentioned to us that wasn't something that you had thought long-term, like when you were growing up, that's what I'm going to do. It sounded like you were going to be like, I'm around here forever. Because you mentioned that you kind of like this area. So can you just tell us a little bit more about the adjustment from that and how difficult that was?
Yeah, sure. It's like I said, I grew up here in the area, spent my summers at Beaver Camp. So my mom shout out to Beaver Camp. My mom was the cook up there in the summer times in the 70s and early 80s. And so we lived up there. And I couldn't imagine ever leaving this place. And had a pretty traumatic experience in our lives. Had a young brother who was sick with a brain tumor and died of a brain tumor when I was pretty young. I was about 15, and he was, I believe, 10 when he died. And I remember that summer was kind of influential in our lives, probably before my junior year, I would guess, of school. And my parents had some friends from New York City, from the Bronx, who were, they really respected and they had spoken into my parents' lives before, been good friends. And they came to visit and they invited them to come down to the Bronx for a weekend. And so my parents were going to go with a few other people from this area. We're going to go to the Bronx for a weekend. And so I told them, I said, I'm not going, I'm staying here. And they said, no, you're going. And I said, no, I'm not going. And I was 15, so I went. So you don't win those arguments when you're 15. And it was really neat. I had met this family when I was 12 years old at Beaver Camp, and they have a son my age. And of course, when you're 12, in the early 80s, there's no internet. We'd not been in touch for 3 years, right? And we go down to the Bronx and we enter the Bronx, and it's so different than what I got here.
It's as different as you could get.
Yeah. I tell people, actually, I had more culture shock when I moved to the Bronx than I ever had at any country overseas. Actually, it was just because I'm in my same state, right? Never left New York State, and it was so different. I always tell people this story. We arrived in the Bronx the first time, and we come off the Cross Bronx Expressway underneath the 4 train, the elevated 4 train. And there's two guys there, and they stop our car, to stop the traffic, and they're carrying a fire hydrant that they had just lifted, and they're throwing it in their trunk, and I'm like, they're stealing fire hydrants here. Like, let's get out of here, right? So anyway, my parents go, they find the address of where we're going, and this family, the Bender family, great friends of mine to this day, we get into their house, and like you said, you just feel the presence of peace there, right? The Holy Spirit, God's presence there in the middle of the Bronx. And I'm sitting there, and their son comes home from school, and just something unique. The two of us, we just hit it off, and I don't remember talking much, 15-year-old boys, right? But just some friendship struck up in that moment immediately. And so we stayed that weekend, and I waved goodbye on Sunday afternoon to my parents and stayed for 3 more weeks.
No way.
And okay. And just stayed down there, and then that just started that friendship. And they would come up in the wintertime for camp and things like that, back and forth. And so when I graduated from high school, I chose to move down and live down there in New York City. And it was neat. Sometimes as young people, especially we go off to college or things like that, we've learned a lot of values from our parents, and when you live in a place like we all grew up in up here, it can be a little bit rural, it can be a little bit protected maybe from a lot of the world. And I see sometimes people go off to college and be like, hey, my parents never told me about this, and pretty soon they're making choices that probably aren't the best for them. And I always joke, I showed my parents, I moved down to do ministry in New York City, I'm going to show them, right?
So you got it.
I just got surrounded by a group of people who were just wanting to make a difference in the world. And whether we were going to, shelters or to prisons or just on the street, playing music, doing different things, just ministry opportunities there. And so it was just a great group of people to be around. Really, really pushed me. If I could speak to any young people, it would be that to look for ways to stretch yourself. You want to get out of that comfort zone, but that's what it did for me. It was not comfortable all the time, right? But yeah, it was a really neat experience. And stayed down there, became part of that church. It was very interesting because they'd had a lot of people like me, come for a weekend or something, be like, oh, this is great, I'm going to do this. And nobody ever stuck. Nobody ever stayed. But I just happened to be the one that they just could not get rid of me, So I was down there, went to school for a little bit, ended up in Hong Kong in China. When I was 18, I went there and lived there for about 4 months. And what had happened was at that time there was an evangelist who had come through and talked both up here in upstate New York and down in the Bronx about the need for Bibles in China. And they talked about how, China had a Christian influence, and when communism took over, they killed all the Christians and burned all the Bibles, and the church was dead, and they were closed off for 30 years. And then in the 80s, they opened back up, and voila, they thought the church was dead, and here it had grown exponentially. But they had this need for Bibles, so take Bibles to China. So me and my best friend are like, let's go over there, And so, we spent 4 months crossing the border with Bibles and doing probably stupid stuff we probably shouldn't have done, but all in the name of helping the church there. Yeah. And so, it really fulfilled something in me. This need for excitement and, to be on the edge and that kind of thing. And unfortunately, I see that desire in a lot of people. And I see all the ways that we thwart that, or that we dull that edge, whether it's through video games or even sometimes sports. And I love sports, but there's so many different things that I think there's something in each of us to want to conquer and to be bold and to be a little bit crazy. And I think God's put that in us, and sometimes we dull that and never do anything with it other than just for our own pleasure. So I was grateful that I had that opportunity as a young man to be like, hey, let's go do this kind of crazy thing. So, when we were done in those 4 months, we flew back to the Bronx, and my best friend, he got off the plane and he was like, that was amazing. I'm never leaving the Bronx again. And I got off the plane and said, that was amazing. How do I do this for the rest of my life? And so I think that was something clicked in me of like, man, something neat about being overseas, different cultures, being an ambassador even, at that time. So,
you mentioned it's the call to adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really in all of us. And a lot of times I think that we look at other people doing things that we want to do, and that's our mirror, instead of accepting that call to adventure and going and doing it. Yeah. It's kind of what Kurt Heisey was talking about. Be courageous. Do the thing nobody else is going to do. Yeah. An idea doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. And I did hear that clip. That was really good.
And living your own visions through somebody else is meaningless.
Yeah.
That's really good stuff. Why don't we take a quick break? They just shut off. But when we come back from the break, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, kind of where the direction even our culture is going. I think you'd have some insight on that. And then I also, before we go, we have to get that poem in here.
Cool.
So we got a couple more segments.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All right, folks. We'll be right back.
Cool.
We were talking about bosses earlier, and so for which reminded me, you've met quite a few presidents, because that's ultimately your boss, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
Is that true or not?
Yes.
The executive branch. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
they
met quite a few presidents.
Know my name, but that's okay.
Yeah. I would like to hear, like, what is it like meeting a president? Which one was your favorite, or which one was like the aura? Like, what's it like meeting the president of the United States?
All right. Here's where I get in trouble, huh? So
I've heard you had some good things to. Good things. I've heard only the good stuff. So you don't.
So it's been interesting, and we talked about this off air just for a little bit. How I tell you that my heart is here in Lewis County, and so our kids often would wonder why we had to live the life we led. Living in capital cities all over the world and things, and they would just be like, it's not fair. Our friends back home get to be home all the time. And meanwhile, their friends back home are like, man, you guys, what a life. You're so lucky, And I'm like telling my kids, like, you're meeting presidents. You're climbing the Great Wall. You're doing volcanoes,
Shut up, Dad.
Like, It's like, they're just like, we want to be at the Lewis County Fair, So,
who doesn't?
Exactly. Yeah. You obviously never had fried dough if you don't know. You don't want to be at the Lewis County Fair. But No, so I have had the opportunity to meet every president, actually, except Trump. I haven't met Trump yet. Yeah, personally. I've been in the same city with him, but have not
Did you
been
say
able
yet?
to meet him yet. Yeah, so I hope I get to meet him. So, I mean, he comes to, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And actually, I met Biden as a vice president, but I count. He's been a president too. So
it counts.
Anyway, there's a couple of them that I have met that just have a charisma that is just off the charts. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting. Bill Clinton is one that is just, I've just never met a human being who, in that moment where he engages you, it feels like he flew all this way just to meet me. Like, he just has a charisma about him. Like, I get it. I get how he was elected president twice, and just really, really interesting. And believe it or not, the second one like that is George W. Bush. Yeah.
Really?
W just has this infectious,
you
folksy.
You could kind of feel that through like the camera. Like, that was kind of, he was known for that.
A little more relatable, maybe.
Yeah.
I can't judge President Obama too much because I met him early in his first term, and I'm sure it's overwhelming for them. You know, if you look at any president, especially any president who served for 8 years, look at them when they got in, and 8 years later, the gray hair, the wrinkle, like it's a tough.
It takes
tough
a toll
job.
on you.
And so it was at the beginning of his career. It was, I think it was a little bit tougher. But I have an anecdotal story that is interesting, might be interesting to our audience. Take it for what it is. I'll preface it by saying, I've worked across administrations, and I have no issues. As a consular officer, we're there to help Americans. Our visa policy really doesn't change much as people will want to say, like, oh, Trump, had these bans or whatever. Truly, it didn't do much to change our policy, no matter who the president is. But was in a course on the Middle East, and we had a journalist from, I think it was from Syria or Lebanon, one of those two countries. And this was during the Obama administration, and she gave an anecdotal story because somebody asked her about her recent interview with Obama. And she said that she had interviewed Bush earlier during the Iraq War. So middle of his late first term, early second term time for Bush. And she was against the invasion of Iraq. And so, but in her interview, he noticed that she was a little bit out of sorts and wasn't kind of right on top of the story. And so he asked her, said, are you okay? Is something wrong? And she just opened up to him and said, my mom has just been diagnosed with cancer. And so I'm really sorry. I want to do this interview. I'm going to do it. We're going to get it done. And he said, no, don't worry. And when the interview ended, he said, what's your mom's name? Laura and I are going to be praying for her. And she told him. And she didn't see him for 3 years. And it was late in his second tour. It was at a foreign correspondence dinner. And President George Bush walks up to her and says, hey, how's your mother, gives her the name, doing? Laura and I have been praying for her. And this journalist has tears in her eyes, saying this. And she changed that by saying, like, Obama, it's hard for him to concentrate because he has so much on his shoulders. He really, personally, he doesn't connect, but it's okay because he has all these other things. And I just thought, listen to yourself. Who would you rather be your leader? And so, it was interesting story there. It's, I would say beyond the presidents, I've gotten to meet a lot of congressmen, a lot of senators, and just got to take Dan Crenshaw through the old city. Jerusalem gave him his tour.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
But it's kind of cool stuff. But, for the most part,
Let's get him on.
Take this for
We're not that close
with a
to
grain
Texas.
of salt.
Can you hook us up?
Well, we'll see.
You know, right?
I got a picture with him. I don't know if he knows me. We'll see. But truthfully, it's amazing to me in our country how we elect people to office. We don't always elect the brightest and the best. I'll just say that. And that has nothing to do with him. He's an amazing guy. But, from
Weird
2004 in China, seeing senators come to China and that, and in all those years, it just, it's jaded me a little bit.
Yeah, we don't send
Up and
our
down
best.
the IQ scale.
Yeah, it's really something.
There's been a lot of people that I've watched in the public space in politics where I'm like, man, that guy would be a great president. And then they're like, no, I don't want any part of it.
Touch it with
It's
a
like,
10-foot
that's
pole.
probably why you should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably is, because you might be the one that we can send that would do good.
I would say that's why it would be for term limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Reluctant. There's a value
different
to
people in there. The good people don't want to get into it.
right. Reluctant
And-
leadership. Yeah. Usually a good quality for that kind of job. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think about that sometimes. Like, it's like the good ones don't, if you want to do, that's what they say. If you want to do politics, then you probably shouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
Or,
Like,
you know, or
aspirations, like we all have aspirations, but aspirations in politics seem to not be a great mix because there's always some suspicion behind aspiration in a not.
and intentions.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's something there. Like, aspirations are good in general, but there's, for some reason, it sparks suspicion when you get political stuff involved.
I think it feels like, especially for Congress, where it's every 2 years, they always talk about, Congress is you get elected and then you spend the next 2 years trying to get reelected as opposed to doing something. So I appreciate my job where we get to go in. I know I'm going to be there for 2 or 3 years. Let me make a difference. Let me, provide some leadership and some direction and
then pass it
run
on.
with it and then pass it on. Yeah. Moving on to the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good argument for maybe even longer terms, but term limits, like maybe a 4-year versus 2, and then you have to stop after 8 or whatever.
I just want to be on record. I would vote for Nick and for Brock.
Yes.
So, yeah. So
Wow.
you
Oh,
guys,
good,
you guys run. There you go.
Well, I don't want to run, so that's why I should run.
We're talking about the IQ scale in politics. You do
Oh,
not
yeah.
want me running.
Yeah.
Bring that one down.
You lost all credibility just now.
Yeah.
I've had people say stuff like that. Like, you should run for the, whatever there's around. Like, nah, I'm all set. And that's how you know you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was a fun little side story. I think the president thing. I've heard the Bill Clinton one, and I don't know why. I think it's really cool. Like, I enjoy meeting people that are, I don't know. Like, I don't think that anybody's better than anybody else. Like, I think we do idolize celebrities and famous people. I do think that it's ridiculous what kind of pedestal we put people on. But I do also understand that it's cool to meet famous people.
Yeah.
And I particularly enjoy meeting famous people if I meet them. Like, we saw Hugh Jackman at a play a couple years ago, and like we got like this far from him as he was driving by in his Uber, and I was like, but like, okay,
You fangirled real hard.
Beyond that, so I think it's really cool, like the aura and like the guy walks into a room and commands the room, and you see why he got elected. Like I think it's the coolest.
Just
thing.
wait till we get Viggo Mortensen in here.
There you go. There you go.
What a dream.
I'll be around the
There you go.
corner, like, is he here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I
Did
just
you
thought
ever get
about-
I'll tell
starstruck?
you, let me tell you how we do it in America, because we do stars, whether in politics or better than anybody. So when the U.S. president travels overseas, the entourage is somewhere between 500 and 700 people. And most of that is security, and they're flying. They fly over the Beast, which is the car, and then they fly over second car, so they got the backup car. They fly over Marine One, which is the helicopter. They just got, for every scenario, they've got it all figured out. Somebody was telling me they were in a country, I won't name the country, but they had the Secretary of State visited. And so one of our Secretary of States traveled over, plane lands, the setup, the pre-advanced team, all of that. Almost 300 people for a Secretary of State visit. And they run the visit. He's there. He does his stuff. Anything, he shoots back out. Secretary of State's been in Israel like 6 times this year. So, because with all this stuff going on. So it's huge every time. Excuse me. But then in this country, the following week, Tony Blair, who at the time was the Prime Minister of the UK, shows up on a British Airways jet with like 8 people, right? So that just tells you, like, our Secretary of State were like, we need 300 people to make this happen. And he's like, I don't know if he was in economy or not. Probably not. But anyway, Tony Blair's just taking an old British Airways plane.
You think we can swing a first class, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. So, these are really big projects every time they're moving.
I imagine the
around.
logistics must just be, they have coordinators for coordinators, I bet.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the deficit off air. Well, maybe the Brits care a little bit more about their budget than we do.
Think so. You would think so.
Yeah, the Air Force One is not cheap.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Have you ever gotten starstruck a little bit?
Yeah. I've some neat personal experiences that most people wouldn't even know who some of these people were. But just one story comes to mind. I used to run a lot. Have not been running for a while and need to get back into shape. But was a long distance runner at Beaver River and in college and run marathons and things
State
like
champion.
that. 2 times.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Let's put that out there.
We're putting
that's
on
right.
the next segment.
Yeah. But and so one of my heroes is Ryan Hall and his wife Sarah Hall. So Ryan and Sarah Hall are these long distance runners for the United States, husband and wife team. Ryan is the greatest American marathoner probably of all time so far. I think he ran Boston in 2:04 or something like that, right? It's just, he has the American record. It's just really fast, really great guy. And they're believers as well, so I really like them. Cool. So when we were in Turkey, the World Championships were in Turkey. And so indoor World Championships were there. And Sarah Hall was running in the World Championships. So I told you, we're going to go. And so we show up. I didn't realize the whole process of getting there. I show up there and get to the stadium, and we're looking around at entrance, and they're like, oh, it's sold out. I was like, man, I came all this way. I was hoping to see some races and that. And so I told her, let's just walk around. Before I get to my car, there's one other entrance to see. And so we're walking over to this entrance, and I hear this guy calling my name. Like, we're in Istanbul, right? The only Turkish guy I know in the country, right? This guy, Wilbur, what are you doing? I said, we were hoping to get in, but we can't get in. He said, I'm working as an interpreter. Come with me.
Dang.
3 minutes from that moment, I am sitting in a VIP seat. Did I say that right? VIP seat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sitting in a VIP seat, overlooking the starting line of the women's 3,000, and Sarah Hall sitting in front of me, getting ready to start the race. And Cheeky and I are just looking at each other like, how did we get here? Like, how did this happen? So, yeah, it was pretty neat.
You flashed your credentials, I'm sure.
I didn't flash anything. I have no credentials to flash, but I just happened to know the right guy in
That's
Istanbul.
something.
Yeah.
Just the one guy.
I had some neat things even just on for visa interviewing. You would find this fascinating, Nick.
I'm sure.
Interviewing people for visas.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Who deserves to get a visa to go to the U.S.? Who doesn't?
You're the guy.
And you're the guy. You get to make that decision. And I've probably done, I don't know, somewhere over 100,000, 150,000 interviews.
Do you just flip a coin?
People.
All right. Heads, you can come. Tails, you
we will talk about this. We will talk about this off camera, But anyway,
that is really how they do it, right?
it was in Turkey again. I was in Istanbul, and this guy's coming to my window, and right away I'm like, there's no way he deserves a visa. He's from another country that pretty much all of them, it's just not a good look. And he doesn't look that good, and said, why are you going to America? Oh, I'm going by myself to New York for 6 weeks. I'm going to stay in a hotel. These are his answers to my questions.
Okay.
Don't know anybody. I'm just going to shop, all of that.
Yeah.
So finally, I'm just typing up my notes to refuse and move on to the next one. I just ask him, what do you do here? So I play football, soccer. So who do you play for? Galatasaray. That's one of the better teams in Europe. So I just quick Google his name real quick. Oh, you're the star international forward for the Galatasaray football team. I said, what's your salary?
He could have led with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, next time lead with that.
What's your salary? What do you make? He's like 40,000 euros. I thought, that's not much. Is that a year? No, a month. He said, okay. $60,000 at the time,
A month.
Yeah. Anyway, here's your visa, sir. You have a wonderful trip, a wonderful time of year. Good luck with the rest of your season.
That's funny.
Yes.
Quick Google search.
Starts with the same exact thing people are trying to pull wool over your eyes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Staying for 6 weeks in New York, just in a hotel.
I don't know anybody.
By the way, I play professional football.
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever you do something over and over, I'm sure you've got stories from policing. People think that they're acting unique or whatever. You're like, I've seen this 100 times. I know this story. I know what I'm looking at. You know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's neat. It's
you're a human lie detector.
That's our officers get really good at it. Yeah, I love training officers, and there's something about trusting your gut in those situations. You know,
is the I think it's kind of been widely disproven as a myth at this point, but maybe you can disprove the disproving of the myth. Can you tell body language, or like are there like tells in people's body language that would lead to them, lead you to that they're lying or they're telling the truth?
Yeah,
like looking to the left is a common one. Like they're lying.
I've been in classes. I've learned all those things.
Yeah. Not sure. Jury's out.
Yeah, the jury's out. Yeah. But there's definitely tells that people have. Some people are really good at hiding them, and some aren't. And,
okay, so like there aren't maybe universal tells, but you can tell individual quirks that you maybe have seen over time. You guys have watched Ocean's
11, 12, 30. They would fool me every time. Those guys, right? Some people are really good at it.
Yeah.
And some aren't, and some are pretty easy to tell the story. And yeah.
Interesting. That's cool.
I have a lot of good, fun stories about that.
I think that the idea that there are universal tells I can see that being a myth, but a person might have their individual tells, like not all of us are lying when we look to the left, but some of us might have some random life experiences that cause us to do a certain thing when we're being untruthful, and that does make that. I can see that being more.
I rarely play poker, and almost never for money. And if I do, I just know I'm giving my $20 as the entertainment for the night, but because I can't hide anything. So.
Do you want to play poker later?
You guys just take all my money. So
that can be arranged.
Yeah.
Well, I'm disappointed. I thought you were going to say us when you were talking about Starstruck, but it's
there.
Okay.
You go.
It's all right.
It's okay.
I understand. I understand.
Brock, I have it. This is totally off the subject, and but I have my one good. Well, I have a couple, I guess, but my best baseball story. Going to the Bronx in that year, I think it was that same year that I stayed for 3 weeks when I first went down. My friends, they were big Yankee fans at the time, and if you look at the Yankees in the early 80s, they weren't very good. There wasn't not a lot happening. So we would watch the games on TV, and then after the game, go down to the stadium, see the players coming out afterwards, right? And so it was a game against the Kansas City Royals, and we went down after the stadium, and I got one of only 2 autographs from George Brett.
No.
On the day of the Pine Tar home run. On that day, I got his autograph after that game. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. That's like one of the most iconic baseball moments.
Exactly. Yeah,
he comes storming out of the
dugout.
Totally
lost it.
Is it Billy
Don't know
Martin?
where it is. And no way to confirm it. The people who were there. But
and I sold it for $1 billion. And
no, the best thing was it was my now sister-in-law Kay. She was a bender, Kay Olio. She just grabbed a pad of paper that she had, and so. That was what I had him get the autograph on, and the pad was like a list of things to do. It said, dumb things I have to do today. Here, Mr. Brett, would you say that? There it is. There's his autograph. So
a couple years ago, we went to see, it was like 5 years ago at this point, Brielle and I went to a Syracuse football game, but it was back when Clemson was they were national champions twice in a row. That Trevor Lawrence was quarterback still, and they played dinky Syracuse in the ACC. So we go to the home game. Every seat there is a great seat, but it's Syracuse. There's zero security there. At the end of the game, you have free reign to just walk down to the 50-yard line and try to high-five guys as they run to the tunnel. They don't give a rip at Syracuse. So we go down there, and I'm and here's me, I'm going to high-five every famous player that I know. And so Trevor Lawrence comes running down, hair waving in the wind. It's a dome, so there's no wind. But anyway, and he's high-fiving guys, and he's got family in the corner. Because I found out afterwards. But anyway, so he's high-fiving guys down the sideline, and there's my hand, and I'm he's coming in. I'm I'm going to get him. And then he sees his family, stops high-fiving, and runs right by me. And I'm no! He went and hugged his family.
And then you cried the whole way home.
I came this close, but I did get a high-five from their defensive end at the time, and his hand was twice as big as mine. He high-fived me and enveloped my hand. I'm 6'3". And that guy made me feel like I was 4 feet tall. It was crazy.
Did your school have football?
No.
So they didn't have any sports with the big guys.
No.
Basketball players, maybe.
Basketball guys were 7 foot.
It's incredible.
Division II basketball is. I remember we going to the first game because all the teams hang out and we knew some of the guys, and so we go after our practice and watch their basketball game. And the difference between levels, like Division 3 to Division 2 to even Division 1, and forget the pros, is huge. Like in baseball, if you're a pretty good baseball player, you can play Division 3. And then like there's a pretty big jump to Division 2, and then Division 1's a whole nother thing. The parity has never been further apart in basketball, because we watched like JCC would play like Division 3, and like it's good, they're good basketball players, but the first game we went to at UB, they tipped the ball and the guy alley-ooped from half court. And I was like, okay. Now I understand.
You went to a Lakers game back in the day, so you've seen the NBA too, right? You watched Kobe play. Yeah, that's probably way different.
I went, and I don't remember the year. I went out. Tyler was working out there, my brother. We went out, and he's like, hey, like Lakers are playing at Staples Center tonight against the Nets, who are not very good. Brooke Lopez. And I was like, I'm going. Like, we're going to go. And so we went to Staples Center and got to watch Kobe Bryant. It's like one of the memories.
That's a bucket list item.
Bucket list, I got
I'll
to see
never
him
get
play.
I'm so jealous.
I think he scored 29, and it looked like he wasn't trying at all. And the thing about NBA guys is they're a lot thinner.
Didn't you realize?
Interesting.
Then I would have thought.
So lanky.
Yeah,
they're
still lanky. Yeah, they could still be 195 pounds, but when you're 6'9",
stretched out.
Yeah, it's so good. Cool. The skill, unbelievable. I would love to see Steph Curry play.
Got to interview a few guys for the
NBA. You?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually have a story that you might remember, Nick.
Okay.
High school kid in Turkey was coming over here and interviewed him, and the issue was with his language skills weren't that great, right? You got to speak English, and so I went to my boss and said, hey, this kid's going to play basketball in the U.S., but his language skills aren't that great. He's like 16, I don't know, 6'10" or something, right? He said, ask him basketball questions. So I went back and said, tell me about who's your favorite NBA team? And it was Kobe, right? Oh, yeah, Lakers, Kobe. I said, why do you like Kobe? And then he starts describing. He's like, he speaks English enough. Right? I'm going to give him the visa.
Yeah.
So he went to play for Syracuse Academy of Science, who I think beat Beaver River that year in sectionals.
I was at the game.
20 rebounds.
I was at the game.
Who was the tall kid?
Yeah, I gave
him the visa.
It was your fault.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I was at that game and we got crushed.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, they all could have been 6'10" from my memory. Like we were very outmatched in that game. So
that's hilarious. So now everybody that's going to listen from your alma mater, it's your fault.
I think I apologized to Coach Petzold at that time. But I'm not sure.
That was rough. That was a rough game. So thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Listen, for 20 years, I've had experiences like that overseas, right? Like it's just been every place is different, and something neat and unique and all that. And as we talked about, that just fits my personality perfectly. My wife, on the other hand, not so much, right? Like Chiqui's personality is very much, she loves to know routine, to know, have everything structure, all of that. Like our joke has been, her preference would have been like to teach third grade for 40 years, and live in the same house, right? Yeah. And here she's having to move overseas all the time, and even for our kids, right? Like we joked about them wanting to be here and that, but it could be tough. And it was interesting. I'll get back to the relationship with Chiki and how hard it is for her, but for our kids, it was an interesting life, and I saw them even sometimes kind of unconsciously when we would move to a new country and meet friends in different settings or whatever, and then people would ask them about their life. You would see them make decisions on how much am I going to open up to you? What am I going to tell you about? Because I know I'm leaving here in 2 years, so we're only here for 2 years. Do I want you to be a lifelong friend or don't you? And it was interesting to watch that happen, in the kids as they did that. And they were, early teens by that point, right? Or at least over 10 or whatever. And then for Chiki, here I am, I'm in a new country, it's a new language, this is so weird, this is awesome, this is great. Well, she's thinking, especially immediately, where's the dentist? Who's the doctor? Is there a pharmacy? What do they have in the pharmacy? Just all of those things and so especially when we were in our beginning of our tours of career, in a place for just a couple years, by the 2 years, she's finally comfortable. Like, all right, rip you out of there. Let's go somewhere else and do that. So we realized very early on that both for us together, we need to get grounded as soon as we get there. So whether that meant finding a church, and just showing up and be like, hey, we're here, we're new, you got us for 2 years, you're going to really miss us in 2 years, let me tell you, but we're here and we need covering, right? Because I've seen a lot of colleagues that really flounder in that aspect, right? They go and they're just kind of islands to themselves and don't really make relationships in those places. Yeah. It makes it hard when 2 years later you're like, all right, see ya, we're out of your lives and probably never coming back here. That can be very difficult. And I know for our kids, it was difficult. It definitely was difficult. On the other hand, they got some really unique experiences. They got to really see the world through a different lens and you know, that aspect of it. When Kimberly got married in Kansas City, there was somebody there from every place we had ever lived all over the world was at her wedding. And it was kind of a neat moment to say, you know, this is pretty cool. This was a neat experience. Yeah.
Was that hard for you as a father, watching it in real time, feeling like, you know, all the heartache of yanking the kids around and kind of seeing it that way if you let yourself? And I'm sure you look back and realize it was the best thing for them and it worked out, but was that tough?
Yeah, it was very tough. It was, hard to know, like, God, have you really called us to this? Like, this seems really hard.
Yeah.
Does it have to be this hard? And of course, you know, between tours, we're able to come home and kind of recharge and reconnect here and with family and friends. But it happened early on. Before I ever joined the State Department, back in the early 2000s, we would come here. That's when we kind of really connected with you guys, right? And we'd be here for camp meetings, say, you know, right? Like, oh, what a great week and all that. And then we would drive back to the South Bronx. And we did not live in a good neighborhood in the South Bronx, right? It was a tough place to live. And, you know, Kimberly at a young age, like, why do we have to live there? Nobody else has to live there. Why do we have to live there? And talking about, you know, we go where we believe God's called us. And unfortunately for you, he's called you too, because he's called your parents here, and get to talk about, hey, your friends here, you know, these friends that you've made in the Bronx. Just think if we never met them, you know, if nobody had ever presented them with the gospel, what do we do? You know, and so that's hard for them to understand at a very young age, but you know, I hope they understand it now. They all talk to me, which is really great.
That is a plus.
I've had to apologize, you know, and ask for forgiveness for a lot of things. But yeah, it's it really hits hard when you read scripture that says, you know, unless somebody hates mother and father and sister and brother, you know, more than me, you're not worthy of me. Those type of scriptures, right? Or the one that I really like is, if you've given up, you know, mother, father, sister, brother in this life, you will be rewarded 100-fold in this life and the future to come, right? So we know that he has for us family in that. And so that's been borne out to us on multiple occasions where in a time of need, in a time of prayer or whatever, we have people all over the planet who, you know, have touched our lives, we've touched their lives, and we know we've got family, really family, all over the world. So that's been really neat. Yeah. So,
what do you think about all three of your kids are living in Lewis County right now? Like, what is that? What is that? How does that happen? What is that kind of testament? That, you know, of all the places that you just described, you've been. All three of your children are currently living in Lewis County. They came back and they're here, like actually living here they've been here for quite a few years now.
Is there something in the water?
There is. There is. The neat thing, Nick, is that they didn't come back. Like, they never lived here. This was never their home.
Yeah.
That's even more amazing, right? It's really, really cool that this was never their home, and yet it's home. It was home to them. And so we're just thrilled. We're thrilled. And we know it may be for a season, it may not be forever, but we're just so thrilled. We're thrilled with their friendships and, you know, even you guys, right? Being friends with our kids and all that, and how they're growing and things like that. It's been really great. It makes it a lot easier for us when we got to come visit.
Yeah, as a parent, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Imagine.
One thing that we always talked about, I heard early on, and in raising our kids, was the importance of our relationship, my wife and I together, right? Like, we saw in many places where we were, especially it would often happen with moms, where the mother's relationship with the kid, with their children, was more important than their relationship with their father or their husband. And, you know, multiple times hearing moms tell kids, no matter what happens with your dad, I'm going to always be here for you. I'm always going to love you. And that brings such instability to your children. I really think that the parent relationship is more important than the kid relationship. And I heard this and I said, man, is it really that important? And so I tried it when our kids were very young. I remember telling our oldest daughter, Kimberly, do you know Daddy loves you? Yes, Daddy loves you. Who do I love more than you? Mommy. That's right. I love Mommy way more than I love you. Can you imagine hearing that from a kid? You would think that would bring some instability or that she would squeal. She would love it. She loved hearing that Mom and Dad's relationship was strong. And so I think as parents, it can be, we have to be careful. You know, our focus is on our kids and all that, but this marriage is what's going to last, right? And we're raising them to leave us. You're raising your kids to leave you, right? Which when they're young, it's kind of hard to even envision that and see that. But you've already seen they grow up really fast. It's coming really quick. And so, you know, I think you've even talked on this podcast about some marriages that don't last once the kids have left. And then parents find out there wasn't much left there. And so we love being empty nesters. We're loving this stage and loving the grandparent stage. But if I could give anything to young couples, like, man, work on that marriage relationship. That's going to bring more strength and unity, you know, for your kids than like focusing on them, being a child-centric home.
Child-centric home.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I have personally experienced, you know, or personally seen myself, the heartache that, you know, parents have when they can't get their kids together in the same room. You know, they have 3 kids and one of them lives over here and then somebody lives in California and then the other one lives across and they can't ever get back together. So it must be really nice. You must be like relishing the fact that right now, and at least in this moment, when you guys come back to Lewis County, you guys are all together. That's really a special thing.
It is so special. It's such a neat thing. And, you know, hopefully you'll be able to have my son or son-in-laws on at some point. I don't know if what the plan is for that, but there's everybody's got a unique story where they've come from and what they've done, right? Everybody has. And so just this season that we're in, it blows us away. Even every day now. And it's been a few years that we've all been together, but still, like, God has been so good to us. Yeah. And to have them all together here is really amazing. It really is. Yeah.
It's really cool. Like, Rebecca will come over for coffee in the morning, and that's just like the coolest thing. Yeah. Like I'll get up and there they are. She's in the living room having coffee with my wife. And
it's so cool.
Like that, we didn't think we'd ever have that. And I've met Christian, and now Christian and I are like good friends. And I don't know that I ever would have been friends with Christian had he not come here and I actually met him and I'd heard enough about him from your childhood and Brielle's, and like I know that he existed, but now I know Christian and I love Christian and we're good friends now, and I don't know, I think it's really cool, and I am super appreciative myself of being able to like know you guys the way that Brielle knew you growing up, and like so Brielle knows my friends growing up and she'll never be friends with them probably, but like I am now friends with you guys and her childhood friends. Neat. And I think that's really cool. I appreciate that a lot. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway. No, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's great.
We love your friendship too.
Wow, thanks.
With our son and all of them. Yeah.
So getting just back to like, is there something unique about this area, or I mean, because when you think of exciting places or great places to live, you've been to most of them. Like when everybody has the outward view of the world, or I love to go to Hong Kong or to Jerusalem. Yeah. What is it about here? Is there something specific about here?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm sure that there's people in other parts of the U.S. or even other parts of the world who think that their little neighborhood or their community is the best. But I think you've heard it enough from people who aren't from here, who move here, who say there's something special about this place. I think you all saw that this summer. This is in 2024 when we're recording this. The main town in this county, Lowville, had some really horrible flooding. and some of it happened like right before, we keep joking about this Lewis County Fair, right? Right before the fair, and seeing the community come together and get the fairgrounds ready for that week, and then during the fair they have flooding and it happens, but things don't fall apart, tear down. There is definitely a feeling of community here. I'm pretty sure, I haven't been around for many years, but pretty sure that it's still all volunteer fire departments in all the townships around here.
Yep.
If you want a fire, you want it to happen up here, because you're going to have friends and family from villages all around there and come and fight that fire for you.
Yep.
Whatever the tragedy is that's going to hit, and tragedy is going to hit us wherever we are in the world. There's just something special about this place. So what is it? What is that? What makes this place special? I think at least part of it is the heritage, Brock, that you and I come from. It's the Mennonite community that's lived here for many, many years. I think that's a part of it. It's probably not the only thing at all, but there was just something about the sense of community that we grew up in, where you are your brother's keeper, you are looking out for your neighbor, and all of that. I remember one story that I went through when I was a young kid. We were part of the Krogan Mennonite Church, and we would do Christmas caroling in the wintertime. And I don't know how old I would have been. I was well under 10, but enough to have this memory. And they would go and find kind of some of the older people in the community and Christmas carol, and then leave them some food and things like that.
Yeah.
We go to this one old house back near Indian River, off somewhere, Belfort or somewhere, and they're singing to this guy, and he's not coming to the door. There's a light on in the house, but nobody's coming to the door. So they actually go in and kind of break into the house, and he's almost dying in his bed. He lives alone. It's freezing in there. Call an ambulance. Like, save this guy's life, from Christmas caroling, And that always, I remember as a kid, like, the ambulance is coming and all of that. So, there definitely is something special. And I think some of it has to do with it's an outdoors area. There's still a lot of people working outside, whether in logging or farming or, construction or whatever it is. It is a special place.
Yeah. I also think that you said that people that come here that haven't been here, also a lot of what I'm seeing more recently is younger kids who went out, like you said, and be like, oh, well, is this the whole big world out here that we didn't know about? Coming back. That's interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Like my whole friend group seems like we're migrating back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
There's
neat.
something to
That's
it.
neat.
There's something to it. Okay, so I want to just zoom out for a second.
Okay.
A little bit more big picture stuff. You mentioned your marriage and how maybe it was difficult for your wife, Cheeky, to kind of evolve into this new lifestyle. Did you guys have to have any kind of, you said getting grounded in the church was important. Did you have talks before that about, this is where we're going to go. This is the life we're going to do. We need to do it together. So we need to get on the same page.
Yeah.
Must have been a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of laughed about it. 2002, when we started this process, we got married in 89. So that put us at about 13 years of marriage or so when we started. We've been married for 35 years now. And so we kind of joked, what do they say? How many words a day a woman speaks, and how many words a day a man speaks?
Yep.
I had used up all my words with my wife after 13 years. Like, I got nothing else to tell you. Well, now we have this new career, and we just found ourselves like talking about it all the time. The possibilities. Wow. Where would we go? What would we do? And so we were like, man, this really rejuvenated our marriage, right?
Interesting.
And then every 2 years, hey, we're going to go to this country. What do you think? Where, and the process of choosing where you go, we really didn't get into that, but there's a process of where you're trying to decide it, and basically they tell you where to go, but you try to have as much input as you can. And so, lots of communication, and of course the State Department has a lot of resources to help families when they first get there. And I shouldn't say pretty soon, but about halfway through our career now, we were the ones who had a lot of experience at it. So we're looking for other people to kind of bring alongside and say, hey, you're going to get through this. This is what to look out for, that kind of thing. So we've made a lot of friendships that way, of just other families and things who are in the same career. But I think it was important for us always to make wherever we were living now, this is home, and this is our home. And so our kids kind of joke about some of the paintings we have on the walls or the dishes we own, things like that. That's home, right? When we've got that popcorn bowl, is home, is the Zehr home, or whatever.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's interesting, and we even see it to this day. We'll be around here in the area for almost a month. We were, be here, and then when we go back home, we get back home. That's home. This is our bedroom, even though we've only been there for 2 years, right? But that's the home. So, yeah.
I feel like that's exactly on par with what you said before about being on the same page with your spouse. It's just massive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people get wrong in marriage. Like they're selfish and they want to do their own thing and their communication isn't very good. And then, here come kids along. Now I can focus my attention on the kids and kind of put this other person behind me for a little bit. And then before you know it, you guys are growing apart. I hate to say that, but like if you let it happen, it'll happen.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. And then you're living with a stranger when the kids are gone, and then the divorce rate speaks for itself. Yeah. So
it's definitely, life is definitely on a escalator, or on what's the walking escalator or whatever, right? That you're never just standing still. You think you are. You think, we're standing. Somebody's getting further away or closer, whatever. And so intentionality is huge. Intentionality is huge. We have to be intentional about our relationships, about our marriage, with our kids, with our grandkids, all of that kind of thing. And at our jobs and with our employees, it's all really important.
And you probably had a first class seat to seeing other people whose marriages were not at the forefront. Yeah. Especially moving around. It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot. So
I knew pretty early on in my career I was not going to make it to ambassador or senior foreign service. I just wasn't willing to sacrifice the family and the time that I often see people having to do. Not everybody has to do that. Not everybody has to sacrifice. I've worked for some amazing bosses, but I knew for me my focus was always going to be on my family and every country we go to. For those of you that are Bible readers, the story of Esther. That talks about for Esther that Mordecai tells her, maybe you were placed here just for such a time as this, right? For this specific reason. And Chiki and I have always thought about that. We've gone to why this country? There must be something for such a time as this. Often there's not. And it's just day to day living out godly principles, being salt and light in places that don't have a lot of salt or light, and just living that out day to day. But when you do have something that's kind of extraordinary, you're like, wow, this is perfect. This is where I want to be right at this time and in this place. So,
Yep. When you say that, I can't help but think that in the Mordecai to Esther in a Boston accent? Because I just can't not think of the VeggieTales.
VeggieTales got you.
Mordecai speaks like a Boston accent.
If there was one place, there's a guy named Mordecai today. Boston.
Yeah.
No, I like that. Zooming even further out. What do you think I'm interested to hear your opinion about the appropriate way to be salt in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. I think it's easier to be light.
Yeah.
In most cases.
Yeah.
How do you be salt in a?
Keep going.
Yeah. How do you be salt? I guess.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You're good. You're good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So, it's salt and light, right? It's what we're called to be. I think going to Israel the first time, Tel Aviv, people ask us a lot of times, like, where's been the best place that you've been and all that? And they're all so different. Every place has been so different.
Sure.
We have one that's probably our least favorite as a family. All of us agree on is the least favorite. Okay. We won't mention that one. But almost all of them have been great.
Okay.
And even the one that's the least favorite, great fruit from that too, right? Like we have some really neat stuff from that. But there's something different about Israel. And I always tell people I was never a Holy Land person. if you any know Christians that feel like, I got to see the Holy Land, I want to see where Jesus walked. My joke was always, the sand he walked on is now at, is now on Lake Ontario. Go over there, you'll probably see it there, right? But when I got there, I realized there's something special about the geography of this place, about the people, and then learning the history and all of that, kind of the biblical archaeology, all of that. It's just been fascinating to me, all of that. And one of the things I see is that we, in the West, we process and we learn very differently than kind of Jewish thought or Hebrew thought or even Eastern thought in that. And so in the West, we often want to know, well, what do you believe? What's your belief? Tell me about your beliefs. And in Jewish thought or in Hebrew thought, it's more, show me what you believe, right? And so this idea of, well, what do you believe? What do you think? Most people don't really care too much, even worldwide, what you think. And I think was it John Maxwell has the principle, people don't really care what you say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel, right? So how we live our life, how we walk our life out, I think is very important. Is that what it means to be salt, how we walk our life out, or is that what it means to be light? I'm not sure. But I do know that when we've tried to live a life that people see there's something different about us. And truthfully, and whether it's fear or what, I'm not always so vocal to, what's the term, proselytize, like, let me give you the 4 steps of the gospel, and, do you know sure. Jesus is your Savior? It's not about that at all. It's about treating people with love and respect, and them seeing it, and them seeing how I treat my wife. I hear over and over for 20 years, man, you and Cheeky are different from everybody else we've met, from all the other officers who've ever worked here. Can you imagine working in a place where every 2 or 3 years, a new boss comes in and then leaves, and then the new one comes in and all that? So, so we hear it over and over. We have a lot of coworkers who we've never once said anything to about our belief system or where we stand in spiritual matters, however you want to say it. But when they get a diagnosis for cancer, we're the first coworker that they call and say, would you come over, and then would you pray with us? When their wife has left them and there's going to be, looks like a divorce is on the way, would you come and pray with me? Would you? And so that's happened to us multiple times. It's been very interesting to me. I think I know there's a place for us to share the gospel, for sure. In my role and in my job that I'm in, I don't feel like that's necessarily the first thing I need to do all the time. Right now, I am in a position where I'm the chief of American Citizen Services in Jerusalem. I have a staff of about 30 people. It's a mix of Jewish Israelis, some secular, some religious. It's Arab Christians. It's Arab Muslims. Some are Palestinian and live in the West Bank. Some live in Jerusalem. Some live in Israel. And as one team, we work together to provide services to American citizens, just as it says across that. And so here I am. I get to lead that team. I've gotten to lead that team over the last 10 months in one of the most difficult times in the history, which is shocking because the history of that place is shockingly difficult, right? And so, yeah, it's been really interesting to see us work as a team and just set that example of, I'm going to treat everybody with respect. I'm going to lead with conviction, but I'm also going to lead by example. I've never asked any of my staff to ever do anything that I'm not willing to do. And it's funny because oftentimes I've had an opportunity, as I've grown in leadership in the State Department, to come into a place, and often there's menial tasks or whatever that nobody wants to do. I love doing those things. I love it. Here's a shredding bucket that needs to be shredded. Oh, it's not my job. It's not my way for shredding. Give it to me. I'm the boss. I'll shred it. No, that's not your job. Give it to me. I'm doing it. I'm doing all the shredding. And it just kind of shames people sometime into hopefully to seeing like, we can do whatever job. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, when you were at the cafe, if the floor needed to be mopped, mop the floor. It was, you know, it doesn't, we're not above any of these jobs, any of these things. And so, I think it does show people. My wife and I have one time where they came to me, but it was about our relationship. And it was 2 Muslims who worked for me. And they said, we've been watching you and your wife, and you treat each other differently than anybody we've ever seen. What's the secret? What's different about you?
Let me tell you.
Well, let me tell you. And there's an open door, right? They have asked me, and I was like, all right, can't miss this opportunity. I gave them an answer, and they both looked dumbfounded, like they didn't understand a word that I said. And I get it. I'm fine with that. But like I had to share with them what the hope that we have inside us, right? Why I'm a different person, because I was not always this nice husband. I'm selfish, you know. I don't think we can swear on here, right? But you know, I was not a nice guy. I'm not a nice guy outside of the gospel and the change that's happened in my life. So, it's neat to be that opportunity. I don't want people just to think like, wow, he's a good guy, or you guys are so lucky that you found each other. No, it's a lot of hard work went into that too, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of laying down your life. When you see a good marriage or good parenting, wow, they're just lucky they have good kids. No, there's a lot of work that goes into it. When we see, you know, Nick and Brielle and their great kids, we think, oh, they're just so lucky. I bet you can say a lot of work went into that, right?
Come spend a day with us.
There you go. Come open the curtain.
And there's a lot of grace that goes into that too, right? Yeah. So we're living on a lot of grace. And so, to me, that's salt and light is just the lifestyle we live. I love being where I am right now in this difficult time and saying, we're not going anywhere. We're here. We're not leaving. We're not running because it's hard. We're here in the midst of this, and we're with you. And nobody's going to outwork me. Nobody's going to, you know. Mm-hmm. I work a lot of hours, and you know, I think it bears fruit in the office space. Yeah. I've been in a lot of places where people say, "Wow, the consular section, they all get along so well," and all that. I don't think that's always the case before I arrive or after I leave. It's definitely something intentional that we try to do.
I think you just made a brilliant analogy. So I had to go potty because I have the bladder control of a 3-year-old. Correction, my 3-year-old has bladder control better than me.
We're going to take a break in a minute.
You said the John Maxwell thing of it's not what you say, it's that people notice. It's what really sinks into them is how you make them feel. And in Jewish culture, I don't know if I missed this, but what comes to my mind is if that part of the Bible is written in the context of how Jewish culture would be thinking when writing that portion of the Bible, koshering salt is used to sink into meat and draw out the blood because they're not allowed to have blood.
Yeah.
So salt of the earth being what sinks into people. If you're the salt of the earth, you are leaving that you're impacting them by how you make them feel, not by necessarily what you say through spreading the gospel verbally, but how you make them feel is what really sinks into them. And that idea of salt being what sinks in.
That's great.
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, you made the analogy, not me.
Better. I'm going to go with that one from now on.
You said it. I was just making the connection for my dumb chimp brain.
I like how you said the question, Brock. You know, we kind of know what it's like to be light. What does it mean to be salt? And they are two different things, right? Yeah. I don't think it's just necessarily
really
the same
good.
thing. That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
It's definitely making a difference in the cultures that we're living in. We've had, opportunity. We've lived in Buddhist culture. We lived in Muslim cultures. We've lived in Catholic cultures. We lived in Jewish culture. We've just been through all of it. And it's just, it's very fascinating the world over. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just stop for a quick break and we'll come right back. I want to touch on before we let you go, what's really passionate to you right now, and then also maybe before that even we'll talk a little bit about your running career because we're kind of loving fitness and stuff like that these days. So if that sounds good to you,
sure.
we'll try to make it short so we can get you out of here.
Cool.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. Well, we're already learning that we're learning the most here.
Yeah.
Like, actually, this podcast is for selfish reasons. I need to have a
Listen, I was
lot
talking
of
to your
learning.
dad about it, and just saying, where was this when we were young? Hearing you guys talking about faith and family and business and marriage and all of that, it's just such great stuff. It's really great.
One of
Applaud you all.
One of the main reasons that we wanted to really get into this too was that, like, especially for my kids and more so for like the older generations, and then down to like my dad's generation, I want to know. I want them on camera.
Yeah.
I want them recorded. I want to have it. I want to have it forever.
Yeah.
Because the way Dad talks about, man, like, I wish I had my grandpa's thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or somebody who passed away. I wish I could have just heard their voice and seen what
my Uncle Lloyd was great with that. That even he was they were in their 70s, and winter night, like, let's go visit this 90-year-old couple that's still alive. Ask them what was, talk to me about it, right? I was doing that with my father-in-law, who's 91, and trying to pick his brain. What was it like when you were a kid? This is like before electricity in Guatemala, right? Before radio, before anything. And it's funny because he just doesn't get it. He doesn't. So he's kind of can remember stuff, kind of can't. But I was like, man, tell me those stories.
Yeah, as many as you can. I mean,
yeah. Exactly.
So even if nobody listens to this, the archive is
the archive's there.
It's worth
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And the wisdom's there,
neat.
and it's getting out to people too, which is really fun.
That's
Because even if you get 1,000 views on something, imagine being in a room with 1,000 people.
Who said? Was that Carrie who said that? No, or was that Dan Meyer? Or
Somebody
somebody
said that.
Somebody said that in your podcast. Like, man,
Yeah.
imagine getting a room of 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
that's
Yeah,
huge,
100
right?
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even 100.
Yeah.
Influence is important. Okay, we're back, everybody, in case you didn't figure that out. You really like our transitions. We'll be right back, everybody. And here we are. Just kidding. We got to take a little bathroom break. We were in the break talking, and we thought it would be actually fun before we get into the running / I'm very interested in people who run long distances because I'm not that way. And I wish I was.
At Beaver River,
And
I was
enjoy it.
tried to be made that way, and I refused.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it either. So
Okay. So before we get to that, let's just talk quickly about the process of selection for whatever cities you get to go to.
Sure. Yeah.
So can you run us through that?
Yeah. So Department of State, we send people to operate our embassies and consulates overseas, all over the world. And we're in pretty much every single country except North Korea. I don't know where else we're not right now. But so what happens is a year out. So let's say, I'm at a certain post where I'm at, and I've got one more year left. So that summer I'll be on the bid list, right? I'll be on the bid cycle. So certain time, I think it's here, beginning of September, a list comes out. These are all the openings available, right? Every job that's going to be on there. I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 places, whatever. So every time you're bidding, you're at a certain level. Like right now, I'm an FSO2, which doesn't mean anything to anybody. But so I'm looking for FSO2 jobs. I personally then make decisions. Like, I don't want to learn Russian. Let's remove all those. I don't want to learn Chinese. I don't want to learn French. I don't want whatever languages I don't want to learn. Let's remove all those. And then there may be some jobs where my spouse can't come with me. So I really don't want to go there. So we're going to take those out, right?
All right.
And then there's some jobs I don't necessarily want to do. I don't want to do this political job or this econ job or whatever.
Got it.
And as a consular officer, I'm a generalist. I can bid on all of those things. And to be a good generalist, to move up, you want to do all of those things. Mm-hmm. I stick to the consular jobs. I want to be a consular officer. I'm going to stick to the consular jobs. I usually don't want to bid on Washington, so we're going to move all those Washington jobs out. At any time, 40% of the Foreign Service are working in Washington, D.C. So we'll remove all those jobs. That usually leaves me with a list of about, 20 to 60 jobs somewhere. And I print that list out and I show it to Cheeky and like, where do you want to go? What do you feel? And
that's cool.
We're praying about it. We're thinking
crazy.
about it and all of that.
Yeah.
And my job is within about 3 or 4 weeks, I need to hand in a list of this is my first choice, my second choice, third choice. And we hand in about 10 different places. They need to be from different geographic regions.
Okay.
So you can't just say like, I want London, I want Paris, I want Berlin, I want, Madrid, right? It's got to be around the world. And and then the timing should fit for those. Like, so let's say there's one where you have to learn a language. That means even though you're leaving next year, that job should be opening up in 2 years. So you have a year to do the language and then go start in the job. Does that make sense?
That in D.C. then?
In D.C., yeah. In Virginia, in the Foreign Service Institute is in Virginia.
Okay.
Teaches all the languages, all of that. So, from that list, then we hand in our list. And then because I'm bidding on consular affair jobs, I'll speak to the Bureau of Consular Affairs and be like, hey, this is why you really want me in this job. This is why here. This is why I really don't want to go there.
You got to sell yourself.
You got to sell yourself. And then they tell you where you're going. And when you join the Foreign Service, they make a big deal about that you're saying I'm available worldwide. So they could tell me you're going to a place that you didn't even pick on this list and your wife can't go with you. You're going, right? And I don't have a lot of say to say, no, I won't go there because I already told them I'll go wherever you send me. And obviously they're trying to send people to places where they think they'll thrive and do well and like that. So for us, it's worked out really well. We have always gotten either our first, second, or third choice of where we wanted to go.
There goes that question.
Yeah.
Were you ever disappointed with the selection?
Well, and then, one story with that. Either our first, second, or third choice, or they sent us to a place that we ended up loving, even though we didn't know it. So Istanbul was one of those. Istanbul was nowhere on my list. Coming out of A100 class, which was the starting class as an officer, was my first post as an officer. And they called my name, Istanbul. And I was like, was that even on our list? I don't even remember that. And we ended up loving it. Istanbul was a really cool city, really neat place to be, all of that. So we had that experience. After I was leaving Tel Aviv, I bid on a job to go back to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. And there were 2 jobs there. One of them you had to learn Spanish first, but I already had Spanish. So I bid on the other job. And a week before the assignments day, I got an email saying, hey, are you still interested in this Juarez job? And it had a long number with it, 005437, whatever the number was, right? I was like, yes, I am. This is great. That's my first choice, Okay. That's really great. And so on assignments day, they sent me that bid number, and it was for the other job that you have to learn Spanish for. And I was like, yes, I accept this. It's a job I wanted. And so I wrote it. I was like, yes, I'll accept this, but I'm surprised you gave it to me because I already have Spanish. Well, 3 days later, they write back like, ooh, our mistake. We didn't realize you already had Spanish. We're withdrawing the job. I was like, what? What happened? No,
you should have said,
do
no
this and all this.
Espanol.
Yeah, exactly. If I had not mentioned it, I would have probably, who knows? And I told them, I'll do something for those 6 months. I don't, send me whatever. They wouldn't budge. They removed it. Well, now all the other jobs are gone. And so they said, listen, we got a job in Santo Domingo, and we have a job in Belize, Belmopan, Belize. And the Belmopan, Belize job was a really good fit for me. It was a little bit above I was an 03 at the time, so it was an 02 job, so a little bit above. And it was as consular chief, so I'd be in charge, I'd be one of the higher people in the embassy. It's not a real big embassy, right? Belize is a pretty small place. So it was a perfect fit. So even when it doesn't work out, it seems to work out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's cool.
It's been really neat. Yeah,
I think you guys should just do it like a fantasy football draft, and then whoever gets to go. Kind of.
It's kind of how it feels. Kind of how it feels. Some people have great luck. Some don't seem to. Partly for us, we never wanted to go to Paris or London or Rome. So when you tell them you want to go to Juarez or
they're like, okay.
Guatemala or whatever, like, oh great, yeah, we'll send them there. So yeah, it's worked out well.
Cool.
Yeah,
I don't. That'd be fun to be in the back room, but not really.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, where's this guy going? Here's his strengths. This got to be difficult.
They actually call it the meat market. So
do they? Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I would imagine that gets a little crazy.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy? So you get your selection is made, and you know where you're going next, and then they send you to Virginia for that language training if the job requires that. Is that every time usually, or?
Ottawa did not require it. Actually, my job in Jerusalem does not require language.
Okay, so anytime
by the time you start getting up higher, there's no language requirement.
Okay,
so you did that
level.
quite a few times though.
Yeah.
So was that part like grind and you hated it, or did you like the year of language training whenever you had to do it?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Both. I'm not good at languages, believe it or not. I speak a few of them, but I'm really not good at it. But it's kind of nice that's your whole job focus is just learning this language. So there's something fun
like
about
that. Little peaceful.
It's a little bit of a break from the grind of the work and all that. Yeah,
that makes sense.
There's not a dress code when you're at FSI, so you're in jeans and you can dress down a bit. And, So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing on my to-do list.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about running.
Running.
You like running,
boy.
and not only that, but Corwin mentioned you. Corwin, episode 3, right? Episode 3.
Yeah.
Check it out. Corwin mentioned you and how you actually got him into like endurance training, long
amazing.
distance.
That's
Yeah.
Thank you, Corwin.
He's a crazy man.
Thanks a lot, because now he keeps trying to get the rest of us in. It's terrible.
It's actually your fault. This is
that's
he keeps trying to get us to do ultra Spartan races, and
I think the only thing I used to talk to Corwin a lot. I did run with him a couple times. The one thing I did with him is I took him on a 20-mile run, like his first time he'd ever gone long.
What is that like?
And so you just run and stop after you hit 20 miles, right? So it is what it is. Oh, thanks, Nick. One thing about being bald. Yeah.
We got a fan in here. We'll get a fan.
If you get a fan on, that would probably help. I'll probably go away in a bit. But
okay.
If I wipe too much, it'll just keep coming. But
no worries.
I don't know if it's hot flashes when I get old or what. But no, let's. So talking about running, I, as a young kid, that was the sport I got into at Beaver River.
You can just leave it for a second, Nick. It might be too loud for a minute. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
We could open that door though.
And so when I was a young guy at Beaver River, I have a brother who's a year older than me that was a runner as well. And I don't know how much of this will get cut out of the podcast.
No, this is good.
Interesting stuff. I was in 7th grade. He was in 8th grade. And we were at cross-country sectionals. And there was a team at that time called Onondaga Central School. Still a Section 3 team down in Onondaga. That's right. And we're watching the finish of the Class C at that time cross-country race. And they had like 7 of the first 10 guys that finished were from one school.
No way.
And my brother and I, our friend Neil, a few of us, we were like, that's going to be us. We want to do that. That's what we want to do. And so, it was just a small group of us that just dedicated ourselves to running. And it's interesting with sport. We really dedicated ourselves. We had a great team. We had a great, with cross country, to win as a team in cross country, you need 7 runners, right? Not just 1 or 2. And so we grew in. So pretty early on, we were the second best Class C team in the state behind Onondaga. And in my junior year, we beat them at the state meet for the very first time.
Wow.
And it was so, it was something we'd worked towards for a long time. What's very interesting about that, and I'll get back into the whole running thing, was I remember my brother and I on a Saturday winning the state championship down in Poughkeepsie, New York, and just getting on that stage and getting that medal and all of that. Just like the epitome of what we had been working for. Driving back home, and on Sunday morning, both of us getting up and going out for a run. For the following year, now we got to defend this title.
Okay.
And for him, now we got to get ready for track season.
Right.
And we just realized how fleeting
that moment
is. You win it, you're on top of the world. Now it's done. Now on to the next thing.
That's how real champions talk.
That's how real champions talk.
Right.
But it's also if you're gonna find your worth in any sport endeavor or something, it's not gonna be enough. It's not gonna be enough.
Interesting.
Jordan would give all his billions of dollars to be able to go back and do it one more time,
Right.
And so it's interesting. So that hit me at an early age, like, man, we worked so hard to get to this spot, and now it's not enough. And so you need to find your worth in something else than whatever that is, whether it's business for you. Some people are willing in business to give up everything to hit that pinnacle and then realize, well, that's not enough, and now I got to do something else. Anyway, so yeah, I loved running. I was very slow. Not as a distance runner, but like I was anything under a mile, I was just too slow.
Okay.
My 800, I think the fastest I ran at 800 was 204, and that doesn't get you anywhere in New York State, right? At 204.
Yep.
And so I needed to run the 2 mile in track or the mile, and had some decent times as a high schooler. And our high school cross country team was just fantastic, and it was just a thrill to run with those guys. Really great guys, really great experiences. We won the state meet, the first 2 state meets that Beaver River won. I think they've now won 19 or something. I don't know what.
Yeah,
what
you guys really sat like so. Me being in school at Beaver River years later. Like, you know, I was in school with Logan Kempney, Matt Cheney, and like the legacy was like just as alive.
Yeah. Just incredible.
Like 20 years later or whatever it was. Yeah.
And that's what we talk about. What's in the water, or what is it that these different coaches, usually high school is all about the coaching usually. And, but we had different coaches that all won state championships, and that was just really neat thing at Beaver River. I will contend, this might be controversial to the cross-country world. Is there such a thing? I don't know. Probably not.
We're going to get some serious hate for some Facebook groups.
I think of Brian Regan with his bird calls on golf. Did you?
What did I just hear?
What did I
Please
just
tell me
hear?
I did not just hear that.
Yeah. No, Beaver River is the best small school cross-country running program in the United States. Public school running program.
You heard it here first.
19 state championships?
Yeah. And
in how many years?
Could be.
But not only the state championships, but in the late 1990s, early 2000s, one of the top 10 teams in the nation of any size.
Okay, did not know that.
And a couple of runners, including Logan's brother, Kempany, who just graduated. One of the top 10 runners in the nation.
Oh, Yep.
I did see that.
Yep. So just really, we've had some amazing teams and amazing years throughout that history. So anyway, I went off to college, and in my very first race, cross-country race at Hunter College in New York, it was actually in Staten Island, Monmouth, I think, was the Monmouth College we ran against. But it was an invitational, so probably 20 schools there, and we took like 13th, our team. And I realized I just lost to more teams than I did my entire high school career. So I knew it was a little bit different animal. But I enjoyed running in college, was pretty good at it my freshman year there. And then running after that, pretty much on my own after that. And I would encourage anybody who's getting into this, find a group of guys to run with, somebody to run with. I was able to do some things, but not anything like I probably had the ability to do just by running on my own and by myself. So through the 90s, I ran the New York Marathon 4 different times. Each time pretty decent time, but only one time did I actually do pretty well, and I wanted to always qualify for Boston. That's the goal. If you're going to run marathons, you want to be a Boston qualifier.
What is a qualifying? You have to get under a certain time?
Yeah. So right now, back then, I had to be under, I believe it was 310 was qualifying for Boston for my age group. 310. Yeah, it's a little over 7-minute pace for marathon.
For 26.2.
Now it's under, I believe it might be down to 3 hours now, or 3:05 at least. So you're got to be like right under 7-minute pace to qualify. I qualified as a 47-year-old. In 2014, and so I had to run under 325. And so I ran a 322 in 2014.
2014, you're getting. Boston Bombing was in 13.
So that was part of so in 1996 was going to be the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. I was like, I want to do that. 95 or 96. I might have my dates off a little bit. And so I said, I want to do that. Well, that's when we ended up moving to Hong Kong, my wife and I, as missionaries. And so I never did it, got fat, stopped running, did a bit. So I have, I need you guys to do more on nutrition because
let's do it.
I have to run a lot to out-eat my poor
diet.
Yeah.
My poor diet.
That's pretty universal.
It's very difficult for me.
Sam Benzing said that. He's a fitness trainer for powerlifters, and he said you can't outwork a bad diet.
It's so difficult.
So true.
Yeah. And so I've never gotten to like the ideal weight to run and like that. And right now it's a lot of work and things like that. The last few years have just been really poor. My exercising hasn't been great, but I love it. It's sad for me because I hear a lot of people say they don't like long distance running or that it's boring or whatever. I do my best praying, my best thinking. I get my best ideas.
Solitude.
Nothing like being out for an hour and a half run and come home. You're like, cheeky, guess what I just thought of, and come back with some great idea that I hadn't thought of before. So I really enjoy it. I've always enjoyed it. I'm very grateful that I've had a pretty healthy body throughout all of this. When the Boston bombing happened, I started to get back in shape in Turkey. And then I was in Mexico, and I had just had knee surgery, arthroscopic, where they kind of my meniscus.
Your meniscus
went in there,
or a
dug it
ligament
out or whatever. And they told me like, oh, you won't be able to run anymore. I said, yeah, okay. And I didn't tell them I was getting ready to qualify for Boston. So kept running, did everything, found the perfect race, ran a 3:22, qualified. That's about 7:40 pace.
Okay.
So
this was at 40. How old?
47, 46, 47. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So qualified for Boston. Finally did that, and then it ran it in 2014 or 2015. I forget what year. 2015. Ran Boston.
So you were there the next year.
2 years later.
2 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been still a pretty emotional thing.
It was. It's pretty cool. There's a reason why it's the granddaddy of them all, and from Heartbreak Hill to the starting line in Hopkins and all that. It was a pretty neat experience. Pretty neat to do that.
You ever heard that? Yeah. You ever heard of that Ruiz lady that like faked?
Yeah. Know all about.
Yeah, we all like her, right?
No, that would have been like I was a young kid just getting into running at that time. I think it was the early '80s when
did
she did that.
literally hop in a car and like drive to the? Or how did? She did do that,
dude. Stanley Hudson in the office
Stanley
did that.
Hudson. Yeah, and they caught her because
5K.
Is it true?
For rabies awareness.
For rabies, yeah. Is it true that they caught her because they noticed she wasn't like perspiring in her post-race interview?
Oh,
no,
good.
So I don't know why people do this. People used to do this a lot. You can't do it as much anymore because now you have these
GPS
little token or GPS thing, and you got to hit certain.
You were
spots,
running 40 miles an hour.
I did it one time, and so I'll tell that story.
But you didn't do it at the Boston Marathon.
Oh no!
It's so sad. I'm so embarrassed of it, and so but yeah, I'll get to that story.
Is your pseudonym Creed Bratton?
Her qualifying race in New York, she'd hopped the subway and then finished and qualified.
That's great.
But in Boston, she made a mistake and she went too far. She wasn't planning to win or even be up towards the front. She was just cheating in marathons. And so she thought she would hop in and finish 100th and nobody would care.
Right.
And she did it too fast or went too far in the car or whatever.
So she wasn't prepared at all.
She was not prepared at all. You see her interview. We talk about...
I'm just as surprised as you are.
Listen, we use that in training when talking about people telling the truth or lying.
No way.
Because, you can see her interview after the race, and it just doesn't make sense. It's just... She's trying to talk about what training she did in that, and everybody's like...
Wow.
Something's wrong here. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting. So what happened to me was, years later, I have a great buddy from our time in Beijing, one of our greatest friends, Rob Foster. Shout out to Rob. And he was a runner too. And so we were in D.C. for a year. So let's run the D.C. Marathon, Marine Corps Marathon. We're going to run it. Well, I got hurt in my knee and wasn't in great shape. And so I told him, I'm not going to be able to finish this. But that race, the 16-mile mark, is just a pretty short walk over to the finish. So I said, I'll run with you for 16 miles. The last 10 are on you. We met our families there, and then we walked over to the finish. So we're just waiting for him to finish. And come. We don't see him finish. We don't see him. It's come. He should have come through by now. We don't see him. Well, we can't go and get where all the runners are, except I still got my number on. So I just hop back in the race and run through the finish just to go find Rob, right? I skipped 10 miles, sat for 2 hours, right? So my time was like 4.5 hours. It wasn't like I was going to win or anything. But here's the thing. It's the Marine Corps Marathon. They have United States Marines who are giving their lives for our protection. They're putting medals on all the runners. And I crossed, and this guy's putting a medal. I said, no. I said, I didn't finish. Everybody's a finisher. Okay. It's like, I just felt... What's the term they use for people that pretend
like an
to...
imposter syndrome?
Stolen valor.
Stolen valor.
I just felt horrible. So yeah, if you see Wilbur in the what would it have been? Maybe 2012 Marine Corps Marathon.
He's lying to us.
You'll see my time, and you'll see I missed like checkpoints. You'll see on there.
I would love to see like somebody get a snapshot of that, like you like trying to.
It was horrible. Yeah. And I did find Rob, and we did meet up eventually, so it worked. But
my gosh.
Anyway, yeah,
he's lying because if you go to his apartment, it's probably like in this beautiful cave,
little
like
shadow
look what
box.
exactly. Yeah.
So you did finish the Boston Marathon, though.
I did finally run
legitimately.
And finish Boston. Yeah. And again, what's interesting is I was qualified for Boston for the next year, but just that drive was now gone. So I love to run, I love all that, but I need a goal. I need something to focus on.
You need a group.
And kind of bringing that back around to what I said about young men in the beginning. Like, how do we get young men to be focused on things that are important and, in their life that they've got a goal to shoot towards, and whether that's marriage, whether that's being an upstanding husband or member of the community or father or whatever it is.
You need a direction and a purpose.
I need it. Yeah. Or I need a group around me.
Maybe that's the next thing.
I've heard you guys talking about external motivations and internal motivations. I've done most of what I've done with internal motivation, but I think I need that external motivation. So
that's fascinating, because you would think that would maybe always stay the same.
Yeah.
But just personality-wise.
But just since that time, it's just been this downward slide of like, it's running less,
pushing it off,
and pushing it off, and so that's where I stand right now.
I have been trying to fight that myself, because I've always been like a sprint, quick, explosive movements guy, and more recently, I'm trying to get in more hybrid training. So I'm doing a lot more cardio, and I'm also lifting weights.
Okay.
But I do have the desire, I don't know if I have the ability, to start running long distances or biking, even cycling. So maybe once you move back around here, we'll go running.
One of my bucket list things was also to do an Ironman sometime. And
me too.
So
me too.
I just
okay.
If you can run a marathon, you can do an Ironman.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like
it's got to be the hardest part.
I feel like marathon is harder. Do you think?
I've got a good friend who was a good marathoner who was also an Ironman.
Okay.
Right? He was a younger guy when he did it too, and the Ironman is not so much about specific training or hard training. It's just putting the time in, just getting it done, getting up at 4 a.m., doing your 2-mile swim or whatever, getting on the bike for 4 hours that day, and then putting in a 10-mile run, and just doing it over and over. Whereas if you want to run a marathon, if you don't want to just finish a marathon, you want to, but I always tell people I race marathons. I'm not just a jogger, right? I hated that term. Right. And so I always had time goals and things like that. Well, then you're doing some specific workouts for that race to
build up to it.
Where I think with Ironman, it is just getting used to how do I do nutrition and how do I just stay on my feet for 8 hours
the guys that I'm following mostly that have been starting to inspire me to do these things are doing ultras, and they're doing They fascinate me. I don't know if I can ever do one or I would ever get to that place. Ironman would be another thing on my bucket list.
I feel like an Ironman is doable to the average person who really trains really hard, but it's like, that would be really cool to say you did an Ironman.
So, guys, we want to all sign up for an Ironman?
No. Corin and I just did a 10K Spartan run.
Those are tough.
They
have 3 main races. They have a 5K, a 10K, and a 25.
5K sprint, the
25K.
Probably 21-1.
When you finish, so ours was the
half marathon.
That one is.
Yeah.
So they have a medal, and they have 3 main races. When you finish one of them, you get a third of that medal.
Okay.
And if you do all 3, you get the full
whole
medal, right?
Yeah.
But there's a 4th race. They actually have a 4th race called the Ultra, and it's a Spartan Ultra. and there's no, you get a full medal for that one.
Yeah.
And Corwin's trying to get us to do that one. It's like a 31-mile race.
Yeah.
Doing it with the uphill and the obstacles.
Yeah. I would have to have it broken up because an Ironman has a marathon in it. Yeah.
No,
Yes.
no. Wait.
Yes.
So an Ironman,
26.2
is a 1 mile swim.
No.
2.
Wait a second.
A full Ironman.
I'm thinking of a triathlon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of a triathlon.
is a 2-point-something mile swim.
Okay.
113-mile bike
Bike
ride.
ride?
Let's look
and
at
then
this.
a full marathon, something
see.
like that. You can look
So
it
a
up.
triathlon is nothing compared to an Ironman.
Well,
it's like a
the
mile
Ironman
swim.
is the ultimate triathlon.
Okay.
And they've got different.
Okay.
They've got, like in the Olympics, the triathlon is probably like a mile swim,
25-mile bike,
25-mile bike ride,
6-mile
5K
run,
or something like that.
Yep. So that's what
Something
I was
like
thinking.
that, yeah.
So an
those
Ironman
are sprints.
Oh,
Ironman sprint.
yeah. No, I'm definitely not doing an Ironman.
Yeah. The
Okay.
Ironman is
That
the
would
long-
be
You're right on the
nuts.
money.
Yeah.
So it's 2.4 mile swim,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
that'll knock you out.
Yeah.
112-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon.
Full marathon.
Holy cow.
26.22.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Yeah.
See, I think the
And these
marathon
guys are-
would get me.
These guys are
Yeah.
finishing it in like 8 hours, like under 8
Oh,
hours.
yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So they're,
But like, I never had like I want to run a marathon just to say I did it. But with an Ironman, I'm kind of like, that would take a lot of
How
training.
long does the swim take, do you think? Like a couple
it's the shortest
Okay.
of them, and that's the swim is actually would be my weakest thing. Like I've got stamina, I can go for days, but I don't swim well. And I did like a 4-mile swim event from Asia to Europe when I was in Turkey, but it's with the current and you know.
And sharks.
But you got to learn to swim right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just wasting
Right.
too much
Floundering,
energy doing
yeah.
that. Floundering, yeah. And it's open water swims, which are harder. And
Yeah.
people are beating on you with their legs and with their arms. And
If the like swimming's hard, biking's a little easier, running's like kind of in the middle, but they're obviously the distances make them kind of so it's kind of like running a marathon. I said earlier that an Ironman is easier, but I was thinking triathlon, so definitely not the case. But yeah, an Ironman is like, can you run a marathon? Okay, now can you run 3 marathons back to back to back?
Yeah.
That's like what an Ironman is.
Imagine running a
Sounds-
marathon after
Right.
swimming and biking.
That sounds like
crazy. And then there's something called a 70.3. Is that something different?
so that's half. That's a half.
Oh, okay.
So
Half
140.6 then is you add all of those distances up.
Yeah, you're right.
That
Half
gives you a full
marathon
Ironman.
or
Yeah.
half Ironman.
Yeah.
All right, that
Yeah.
could maybe be.
Yeah.
But you probably got to work up to it.
Yeah.
Do one do a triathlon, then do a half Ironman, then
Yeah.
Pretty
So yeah,
fascinating.
I love
That's great.
distance running. I really appreciated Corwin's shout out. I didn't feel like I did much with him.
Sometimes it doesn't
He's-
take much.
Yeah, he's like, you wind him up and he's
it's just
good
amazing.
to go.
I love to see what he's done. And you know, man, shout out to all these episodes. If anybody's just coming onto this podcast now, go back and listen to them all because Corwin's humility to talk about the stuff he's done and the changes he made. That was pretty amazing. So I still love it. I love it to this day. I'm still able to run. I do not agree with those who say, like, oh, running ruins your knees or whatever.
I was going to ask you that.
Listen, I know runners in their 60s and 70s who are running 30, 40 marathons a year.
Is it bad form?
Yeah.
Is it bad form?
It's bad form.
Just
it could
genetics?
be your physiology. Could be your body.
That's why I don't run. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
run
definitely.
'cause,
That's why I haven't
yeah.
done an Ironman yet.
I don't run.
There you go. I do know.
Just taking care of my body.
I often think a lot of our joint issues have more to do with muscle issues. Like if we would strengthen our muscles really well, a lot of those joint issues would go away.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's what knees
I
over
think
toes said.
Yeah.
Knees
Yeah.
over toes. That's
Yeah.
what he says.
Yeah.
On that vein, do you think like prior injuries before running? Like, so I played semi-contact sports, but I've injured my knees and my hips and my ankles, my whatever. And I noticed that when I run like 2 miles, let's say, I'm in pain. Like those places hurt. Do you kind of get over that? And can you kind of adjust? Because
I think there's some of that. Some of the better biking I did when we lived in Ottawa. We were about 11 miles from home to the embassy, and I got a pretty good bike and would bike, 20 miles a day, back and forth. And, after winter, when I couldn't do it, when I would start up again, those first few weeks, I would get off the bike and I couldn't walk like for the next half hour until it kind of loosened up again. And then eventually, and don't ask me about medical stuff because my always thing is if you ignore it, maybe it goes away. Well, in this case, it did. After a bit, it would go away and be fine. So I think there's definitely, you got to be careful. Obviously, you guys know your bodies better than I do. But getting the right shoes, running on the right surface, that kind of stuff, I think can be very important. And
I got ITB one time. Oh,
what is
could
that?
not run. Iliotibial band syndrome. It's when the ligament or the tendon on the side of it rubs against your knee and it gets inflamed and makes running darn near impossible. Yeah, and that's when I realized you can't just run. I was getting a little older.
Listen,
you gotta prepare for it.
I subscribe to a lot of pseudoscience stuff.
Tinfoil hat.
Tinfoil hat, baby. What was the tape? The joint tape?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
KT tape.
Yep.
No.
That KT tape worked for me.
No.
Worked for me. Worked for me, Nick.
Voodoo witchcraft.
Yeah, voodoo witchcraft. Whatever it was. That really helped me. I had both my knees taped up when I was, running a lot. And
Because it supports the muscle
really
or something.
Supports the muscles. Yep. That's what it does. It pulls the muscles into play.
Yeah. And I think too, like when your body gets used to doing something, then you're starting to stretch out muscles that you don't normally do. It takes pressures off your joints or your ligaments and such. Yeah. So I think you just got to kind of grind through some of that.
Hey, I was listening to, you had Sam
Benzing,
yeah. So I'm looking forward to, a couple of years maybe retiring, getting back here full time and
having Sam work with you.
Working with a real trainer. And,
You know what I loved about him was that he was so down to earth with his training style. Yeah. He's not like rah, got to get in shape, do X, Y, and Z. He was more like, I'm going to meet you where you're at and like understand the psychology of the person maybe.
Yeah. So, as a Coke Zero guy, I appreciated that.
Yeah, Coke Zero.
Better than
that's right.
This water's better for me anyway. I know. We all know it. We know this one. Meet us where we're at. Thanks.
You are an avid listener. Yeah. Well, good. Before we go, you wanted to pull up this this poem that you kind of live by in certain ways. I wanted to pull it up there. We're having technical difficulties.
Yeah, I'll have you read it here in just a second. But again, kind of reiterating what we talked about before. Young men, go stretch yourself and find something worthwhile to go after. We can waste a lot of time going after things that are just worthless and really don't bring any value to our lives, right? They feel like they do, but they're really empty calories. And so, and what I said from the get-go, I'm a Lewis County guy. This is my home, and this is where I want to be, and yet haven't lived here since 1985. And God has just had us all over the world. And I struggled with it for a bit. I really did struggle with it. Why do others get to do that? And, why can't I? But I just really have felt this calling from the Lord to do what we're doing. And my wife and I often take a line from a movie where we look at it and say, how did we end up here? And, working as I mentioned I'm an FSO2 officer in the Foreign Service. That doesn't really mean anything to anybody, but the equivalent, the military equivalent, is a lieutenant colonel, which is pretty decent, right?
Yeah, I would say.
Those are the rich kids growing up.
Yeah, so I think Cheeky would give me a little more respect, but I feel a little bit like Rodney Dangerfield here. But
it doesn't roll off the tongue the same as lieutenant colonel.
I'm an FSO2 here, but yeah, it's just it really is. How did we get here? And we're just so grateful for that opportunity. And I came across this poem many years ago. And that's not the one there.
Oh, okay. Let me fix. This is different. Okay.
Yeah. So
you said George?
It's McDonald.
Shel Silverstein.
That's the tree, isn't it?
The giving tree. Yeah.
Frost.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what we got here.
Yeah.
Is it longer? I think I got it.
Yeah. It should start off. We'll walk in the fields.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
We'll overlay
you're
this.
You're going to make me read it, but I don't know if I'll be able to get through it. But if anything sums up the life that Cheeky and I have had, it's this poem. And So Obedience by George MacDonald says, I said, let me walk in the fields. And he said, no, walk in the town. I said, there are no flowers there. He said, no flowers, but a crown. I said, but the skies are black. There is nothing but noise and din. And he wept as he sent me back. There's more, he said. There is sin. I said, but the air is thick, and fogs are veiling the sun. He answered, yet souls are sick, and souls in the dark undone. I said, I shall miss the light, and friends will miss me, they say. He answered, choose tonight, if I am to miss you or they. I pleaded for time to be given. He said, is it hard to decide? It will not seem so hard in heaven to have followed the steps of your guide. So I cast one look at the fields, then set my face to the town. He said, my child, do you yield? Will you leave these flowers for the crown? Then into his hand went mine, and into my heart came he, and I walk in a light divine, this path I had feared to see. I don't know if you got time for one last story.
Yep.
But
go with that. Go ahead with that.
When I was 17 years old, I was at Beaver Camp, and it was the last week of Teen Week at Beaver Camp. And I told you I'd lived there as a kid. Beaver Camp had always been this oasis for me. And here I was surrounded by all these kids that I had grown up with my whole time, and counselors that I had known for years, and just people I trusted. My whole life was there in that moment. And I knew that 2 weeks later I was leaving to go to the Bronx, right, to go to college, and just this brand new experience and all that. And I just cried and cried that night, that last night of teen camp, just knowing my life is never going to be the same. All the people I know, all this life that I know is going to be behind me, and it's not ever going to be the same again. And it was very interesting thinking about that moment years later, right? And there's been multiple times in my life where I've been sitting either in our living room or someone else's living room, surrounded by friends and people I know, surrounded by my wife and my children. None of these people I even knew who existed back at that moment at Beaver Camp when I was 17 years old. Yep. And yet this amazing life that God has had for us and had for me, right? And if I could have stayed in Lewis County, I could have stayed there, I would have had a wonderful life. It would have been great. I know it. But I'm just so grateful for the choices that he led me to make and the path he led me on to do what I ended up doing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you know what you sound like? You sound like the rich man.
Yeah.
What you're describing sounds to me like the purest form of the rich man that everybody always talks about.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know that I've heard a better real life example of what that person actually looks like.
Wow.
You look like the rich man.
I'll take it. It's been a rich life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean that it's surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are the rich man.
So there you go.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks for coming. Really, what a pleasure for us.
Absolutely.
We respect you a lot. Been a great friend, a great person to look up to, and I just love everything that you have to say.
Yeah.
So we'll have you back on when we're getting ready for our marathon prep or
awesome.
our Ironman prep.
That's right.
Nick already committed to it. So
I got a great
do we do
training
baby
program.
steps? Is there a quarter marathon or a quarter Ironman?
Yeah, and just thanks for your insight. Thanks for
definitely.
Nick and I talk all the time. This is like we learn the most through this, and we just appreciate your time, especially for coming in and joining us and hanging out. And
Appreciate it.
We also
time
joke.
Stateside. Thank you.
Yeah, stay stateside. We also joke that it's just a way to kidnap people for quality time. Yeah, so
it works.
We'll take it. Awesome.
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's it for us. We'll see you next time.